Hey, everybody, it's Joe Bartnick, and welcome to Bert Sugarman's Midnight Special podcast. We are happy to have you back because we are building a community, and it's nothing better than sharing stories and appreciation for the greatest music era that ever existed. I mean, we may be biased, but it really is the greatest music. The rock, the soul, the country, the blues, everything. And it's all right here on the Midnight Special YouTube channel. And thank you, Bert Sugarman. And thank you to my co-host, Mike Now. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, and thanks to everybody who's been submitting and making my job easy on the YouTube page. I appreciate all of your stories about all of the bands like the Bee Gees we've been talking about. It's been fun.
How great was that episode of the Bee Gees?
Oh, it was so fun. I got to learn so much. It's like doing a musical book report each week.
I just can't believe how crazy those guys were.
Yeah, they were the impetus of what like Saturday Night Live and those type of hosts should be, like those type of characters.
Right. We talked about it last week, but it was just fun. If you haven't seen that episode or the podcast episode, go check it out. Because this week we have a fun one. Are we going to bury the lead or are we going to get to the comments?
Oh, we can take it away. Tell them who it is.
It's the great Steve Miller from the Steve Miller Band. Imagine that.
Yeah, millions of bands, actually. But yes, as most of us would know, the Steve Miller Band. But I got to find out all of his influences this week. But let's start with a little bit of the comments from you guys from the past few weeks. I got a few fun ones from us that I've pulled from videos. I loved this one on the Right Place, Wrong Time Dr. John video.
Oh, I love that song.
One Blast Man. When I first heard the Grizz Grizz album, in 1968, I knew I had to move to New Orleans. I got the chance in 1976 and have lived in South Louisiana ever since. When I first got the album, I had no idea what the backliner notes meant. After living in the city for a few years, it all made perfect sense. Caught him at Jazz Fest every time he was there for years. He's one of the greats. Rock in peace, Mac.
He really is. I mean, I know so many people that are in love with Louisiana and New Orleans. I mean, I love New Orleans, but I know people that just, it's like they make a pilgrimage every year to Jazz Fest. And Dr. John is literally the Grand Marshal of the Jazz Fest.
When they came out on their episode of the Midnight Special, they did a march, like a parade basically, all the way up to stage. It was a great one. They had all of the energy.
I want to go to Jazz Fest one day. I heard it's better than Mardi Gras.
Hey, if you like music, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love music. And I mean, New Orleans is really the jumbo, the gumbo.
There you go.
Jumbo's Pittsburgh bologna. That's my Pittsburghese coming out.
All right. So here was a comment on the episode from episode 52, which was Steve Miller hosting, from Rebecca Wagner, 4167. This brings me straight back to my teenage years. I love to watch the Midnight Special every Saturday night. I lived for watching my good old rock and roll. The Midnight Special had the best rock and roll on their show. It was when we had great music and good times.
You know, I was born in 69. I enjoyed the 70s. 70s was, I think if you were an adult, there was a lot of badness going around. I think there always is when you're an adult. But it was a great time to be a kid.
Yeah. All of the they say every 20 years or 30 years, that's what your generation looks back on. And I feel like that's what I look back on, like 60s and 70s. That's the clothing. That was like the hip stuff that we all wished we had growing up. And so now the kids are looking back at the 90s as like the right before people had iPhones all the time. That's their nostalgia. Man, it would have been cool to grow up then. But I grew up thinking, man, it would have been cool to grow up here.
You know what? It was cool to grow up in the 70s. I wish I actually grew up in the 60s as well.
Yeah, so many times.
Yeah.
So, one more comment from John Smith Percussion. The Midnight Special during its original run, I had watched it every week. Thank you so much for making these available. It's truly a high point for the week. And I get that comment all the time on our page. And thanks, Bert.
It's awesome that they're being released, and it's cool that they're being released little by little, so you have something to look forward to. You know how nowadays people just dump out, here's 500 episodes, and then you'll just sit there one weekend and watch them all. This way, you have something to plan every week. Hey, Friday night, we're going to watch the Midnight Special.
And we have the same 500-person group in there, and I recognize the names, and it's the same little community, and they know who's there and who misses a week, and it's a fun little thing. And the people who are channel members who get to see an extra episode on Mondays, they all have the little badge next to their name, so we know who the people are who are in the Monday chats.
Oh, look at that.
So It's a fun little group we have going there, and everyone else, you guys should be joining us for our Friday live streams. They are at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific every Friday.
It's a perfect time.
Yeah, for
A little
getting
happy
off
hour
work
action,
here,
like
or
your third
late
beer,
night there, yeah.
maybe your second doob, and you're ready to rock and roll. Steve Miller, fly like an eagle, baby.
So one of our other segments is our old school cool photo submissions. And we haven't got any from you guys yet, and I will start beating the drum a little more on social media and on our YouTube page and explaining to everybody what the old school cool segment is. But our episodes haven't aired yet, so I can't blame anyone for not knowing exactly what we're doing yet. But
We don't have any mediums?
yes, but I found a good picture to suffice this episode. And here's a picture of Steve Miller from 1967, and it was in San Francisco, photographed by Baron Wallman.
Look at that. You know what's so funny about these old pictures of Steve Miller? He was really far out there in the 60s, and you can even see on his first appearance when he was a guest star.
For our audio-only listeners, this is a famous black and white photo that's been used on possibly some of the greatest hits albums, and he's holding the feather in front of his eye, looking straight down the barrel of the lens. And fun fact, the photographer who took this became the chief photographer of Rolling Stone. He began his career in photography for the U.S. Army doing intelligence in West Berlin before moving to San Francisco and pursuing photography professionally and the growing music scene. That's
pretty neat that someone learned something in the Army they could use. Usually, like, you learn how to blow up tanks, you really can't use that back home. But this guy's taking pictures of spies.
If you're running around in war with a camera, I think you've earned some skills.
Right, but I mean, he was in Germany in the war or just in the 60s? If he's in West Berlin, the war was over. So he was just taking pictures of spies. He's probably taking pictures of hot German chicks, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna come back, and you're gonna be taking pictures of John Lennon and the Grateful Dead."
Ah, there you go, spies. So, yeah, the regular James Bond photographer,
right?
He probably got all the girls then, and then went from doing that to Rolling Stone. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the ultimate hooks to get a chick, right? I'm a photographer, or I'm a Rolling Stone photographer. Wow.
Yeah, he was the original Rolling Stone photographer.
You know what's funny about that is we tried to recreate for my wedding invitation. We tried to recreate the Yoko Ono John Lennon when Yoko Ono's laying there and John Lennon's on top of her naked.
Oh,
it just looked like a bloated Italian guy laying on top of a poor woman. We couldn't send those out to anybody.
No, it never looks good.
No, you gotta be English skinny.
Not stand-up comic, not skinny. Yeah. Well, let's jump in the time machine and then go back to when Steve Miller Band hosted their first episode, January 25th, 1974.
That was a little reaction myself. That's right when the Steelers won their very first Super Bowl, which is like the second or third thing I've ever remembered in my life.
It's a good memory to hold on to.
Super Bowl IX. My grandfather bought a huge TV because he wasn't allowed by his doctors to go. And he bought a huge TV to watch the game on. That TV lasted so long I brought it to college. But my dad went. Super Bowl IX.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
So the number one movie in the country, The Exorcist. Did you watch The Exorcist?
You know, I have a funny fact about that. It's one of those movies I've never seen.
Wow. I grew up being told that and The Shining were the absolute scariest movies.
Yeah, I was just scared to watch The Exorcist. Like, you know, I was a young kid when it came out, and I'm like, I don't want to watch that. That sounds awful. I mean, that sounds scary. I'm not a scary movie person. It's like, I usually don't get scared, but I try to avoid those. Now, The Shining I did see, but that'll probably come up in another episode.
Well, the fake puke in Exorcist, I think, was iconic, and it's been done over and over and over. And
then the girl says her head spins around like 40 times or something.
Yeah, so many iconic things in that movie.
I've seen like clips of it, but I haven't seen the whole.
And maybe that's why it wasn't scary to me, too, because I'd probably seen the parody comedic version of the entire movie played out already in different reasons. Yeah. So the number one TV shows at the time, or at least prime time, we had The Brady Bunch, Kung Fu, The Odd Couple, and Kojak.
I love all of those shows. The Brady Bunch, I mean, I think I've seen every episode 40 times. And the other thing is I've seen every Kojak episode 100 times. It is my all-time favorite TV show. Mike, I didn't know this was going to be on the list. I watched 4 episodes yesterday. I want to do a remake and call it Bartnick. You know how in my comedy special there's beginning is like a 70s spoof? It's basically Kojak.
There you go.
Yeah, I love Kojak. Who loves you, baby? I should start using a lollipop on this show. Yeah, the original bald cool guy is Telly Savalas, Detective Theo Kojak. He's the best. And the Odd Couple, you know, I have a daughter. She's 20 now. And when she was a little kid, you know, it's hard to pick shows that everyone can enjoy. The Odd Couple is such a great show that she could laugh when she was 12 as hard as I was laughing and I was in my 40s.
The number one song in the U.S. was You're 16 by Ringo Starr.
Ringo would get in trouble now if he came out with that song. He'd be Me Too'd.
Yeah. There's no You're 16. That's you're in jail.
Yeah. It should be I Hope You're 18 should be the name of the song.
It's Let Me See Your ID.
Well, a lot of songs are like that, you know, Sweet 16 and those, you know, there's a lot of famous songs.
Yeah, there's
BB
definitely
King has one, the Beatles have one. I guess Ringo has his own. He didn't get in trouble as the Beatles, so hey, let's try this as a solo artist.
So let's get into Steve Miller now.
Steve Miller is such an interesting cat and truly a virtuoso musician, not just a guy that can play 3 chords. I mean, I've seen him live a bunch of times, and especially even on the Midnight Special, the guy knows how to play guitar, and he should, because if we go through his history, he has a pretty amazing lifetime.
Quite the lineage. He was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, October 5th, 1943, and his godfather was famous guitarist and songwriter Les Paul.
Les Paul basically invented the electric guitar. That's why they're called Les Pauls.
Yeah, you find some of those of the right year, and oh, buddy.
Yeah, imagine him coming to your parents' house and here's some chords how to play. Here's how to jam, little Stevie.
Yeah, and once he was ready to leave the house of that famous lineage, he went to Chicago to learn some more history about the blues and was performing around Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf and Buddy Guy.
I was just listening to Buddy Guy on the way over here, but you know, we missed a very important step. Right when he was in his early teens, his family moved to Dallas, where he learned under the great T-Bone Walker.
Ooh.
T-Bone Walker, he's who influenced B.B. King. And T-Bone Walker he is one deluxe twin pack DVD CD, which I listen to constantly. T-Bone Walker, he taught Steve Miller how to play with his teeth, how to play behind his head. He was the old-fashioned Chitlin Circuit king, T-Bone Walker.
Well, shout out T-Bone.
Yeah. And then after he left there, he went to Chicago because when he was in college, I think he quit college by like 3 credits to move to Chicago and play the blues, which is, you know, the man has blues in his heart and music in his soul. When you're like, yeah, I have one more class, I'll graduate. No, I'm just going to move to go play with Muddy Waters.
So, yeah, that's where they started the Goldman Miller Blues Band, and they eventually were opening for the Four Tops and the Supremes.
You got to love that.
Yeah, that's some heavy hitters right there to be playing around.
The Supremes.
Even in the same venue.
Yeah.
Well, after a few years in Chicago, he moved out to San Francisco and was inspired by Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, you know, he was still a blues guy, you know, even though like that psychedelic blues, if you will. Steve really kind of held to his core of being a blues guy. Even though he got a little trippy in there, he was still just a blues guy at heart. I mean, when you play harmonica with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, you're a blues guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was as good on the harp as he was on the guitar, which is amazing.
And you can check out one of our playlists and find some of Paul Butterfield on there, who is also on the Midnight Special.
Oh, I can't wait to check that out.
So eventually, Steve Miller found himself inking a deal with Capitol Records, where he had creative control over all of their records. And it was kind of a landmark deal at that time because not many people had creative control, but that was a huge thing for him. And especially with all the direction of his music, it's understandable.
What was funny about Steve is you knew he had to have creative control or he'd smash a record over somebody's head. He didn't have creative control whether it's in the contract or not. What I thought was amazing that I dug this up about his time starting out in San Francisco was his band, the Steve Miller Band, was the backing band for Chuck Berry on Live at the Fillmore. And the Fillmore is where I used to work. It's where I met my wife, and I love Chuck Berry and I love Steve Miller. So the fact that they were combined for one of the greatest live albums of all time is incredible.
And at that time, Boz Scaggs was part of the band. Another heavy hitter.
You're kidding.
Yeah, he played for a couple years with them, and was on the album when they made Living in the USA, which was their breakout album.
Boz Scaggs. My parents had some Boz Scaggs albums, and then when I was working at the film where he did like a 13-night stand where he didn't even take a night off. He was there every night for 13 nights, and us and the crew, we knew every song by heart by the night 13th. It was like deja vu. Oh, what night is this?
Well, we have some wonderful performances of Scaggs on our channel.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, he has hits.
Oh my God, yeah. His one album is like one of the most popular albums of the 70s.
Well, after a few years with the band, he eventually clearly left to go out on his solo act. But Steve, unfortunately, broke his neck in 1971, but giving him some time to slow down, that led to 73 when they made their best album ever, The Joker.
The Joker, everyone knows the lyrics to The Joker. What's funny about The Joker is he has named, some people call me the Space Cowboy. Some call me the Gangster of Love. Some people call me Maurice. Those are all those are all in his other records. It's like his first couple records that didn't sell as much. He called himself the Gangster of Love. He called himself Maurice. So when he finally put it all together on a Joker, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna bring it all back together.
Joked about himself, a little self-deprecation, and it worked.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Well, everyone else did too because the Joker went platinum. And then their follow-up album was Fly Like an Eagle.
Oh, you know every song on that album.
Yeah, and I will,
even you do.
I'll embarrass myself a little bit and say the first time I heard Fly Like an Eagle was actually in the Space Jam soundtrack. And it was not the Steve Miller Band version. I believe it was Seal.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, not quite the same, everybody.
No, I bet. Seals don't fly.
Yeah, seals do not fly like an eagle, but it brought the song back and was a hit for a while.
Absolutely. Well, the album, he had three major albums because the third one of that Joker, then Fly Like an Eagle, and then the third one being Book of Dreams. Because after that, then they released Steve Miller's Greatest Hits, and from 74 to 78. And when I mean everybody had that album. It was like a pet rock, like a lava lamp. It was like everyone in the 70s had that. I've had, like, my parents had a copy. I've had 3 versions of that. I've had it like on album, on cassette, on CD. Everybody has Steve Miller's Greatest. You can see it's blue with the horses. It's like it's not even iconic. It's like the Coca-Cola sign. Like everybody has that album.
You can pick it out. You see it all over the place. It's like eventually some jukebox, something. Like every jukebox in every art department, that should just be one of the albums in the jukebox.
Right. And it literally is it's not like, Greatest Hits, like a couple of songs. It was like, it's every single song. And it probably actually hurt Steve because then, like, come about 1980, no one ever bought individual Steve. Yeah. Because why would you? They're all right here.
That's what Greatest Hits albums kind of do. And now with the internet, though, that killed all of that. That's just a whole different thing. Everything's a la carte in MP3s. Right. But at that time, once your Greatest Hits album comes out, it's like you're kind of done with everything before. It's like, all right, we're wiping all those sales, and now here's this.
That's how you can always tell a big fan when we were kids. Like, well, you just have Greatest Hits, man. You don't have, like, Fly Like an Eagle.
Those are the deep cuts, the DJs, the real cool guys. They had the full albums.
Yeah, it's like, and the thing was, I knew people that had the Joker, and I knew people that had Fly Like, I know anyone that had Book of Dreams.
Well, the Steve Miller Band was eventually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame where they belong. And if you want to hear the drama on the rest of that, you'll have to find a different YouTube video because it didn't go swimmingly.
A little conflict.
A little bit. But let's focus on the fun times for the Steve Miller Band and when they performed on the Midnight Special. They hosted January 25th, 1974, performed their hit The Joker, as well as, not from my time period. Say that name. I'm going to butcher it.
Me?
Shuba do ma 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 ma. Did I get it right?
That was excellent. Yes.
Got it.
Take a bow.
Yeah, it doesn't get said too many times in my presence to kind of get that mouthful out right. And Fly Like an Eagle and Sugar Babe were also performed on that one. And the big boss man, James Cotton.
And I mean, no one knows more about the blues or enjoyed the blues more than Steve Miller. And he really gave James Cotton a big intro, which was great because James Cotton blows it up.
Yes.
Playing harmonica on Big Boss Man. It's an incredible performance. You got to check it out. The other ones on there that are great was Brownsville Station does Smoking in the Boys Room, which from Motley Crue. They do a great rendition. And then the James Gang with the one and only Joe Walsh crushing it on this episode. There's just a lot of jamming on this episode.
This lineup was unfair. It's possibly one of the best lineups the show has had because also Tim Buckley and then little band called Genesis, no big deal.
Yeah, like the tripped out psychedelic.
The Genesis that most people don't recognize. Yeah, I believe it was a theater performance that was aired on the Midnight Special, and it is full neon, full face paint, full everything, and
it's a little trippy.
You got to check it out only on the Midnight Special channel.
Absolutely, that's what's so great about the Midnight Specials. They bring everything together. It's really a gumbo.
There you go. This wasn't the first time Steve Miller was on the show. It was just the first time he hosted. They were actually on June 22nd, 1973 with our friends the Bee Gees. And they played Living in the USA, their first song that really broke them out to the public. And then, again, Shoo-ba-doo-da ma-ma-ma-ma.
Once again, you nailed it. And
didn't feel as good that time. I tried.
No.
Didn't flow off quite the same.
You had a little hitch. Little hitch, but you still nailed it perfectly, though. But the Living in the USA with the Bee Gees, the intro is much more trippier, and it's definitely a little bit more psychedelic, and he dedicates it to Richard
Nixon.
Yeah,
yes.
So a little political. And I think the funny thing and the difference is between the two spots are the first one, he's wearing a wife beater, but it's a black one, and he's kind of way more rogue, like 60s rogue. And then by the 70s when he's hosting, maybe Burt made him wear a collar. There's a dress code when you host, Steve.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a different vibe. One, you got to be very out there. The second one was, hey, you're talking to America this time. We heard you last time address Richard Nixon. He called us. We had a chat. And we said, no more of that on national TV. And I bet national TV was a little more hands tied on national TV back then compared to the way it is now. Because there weren't as many channels. And especially after midnight, these guys were the only people on. So Richard was probably watching.
Well, they were very tight. I mean, I know it was like a few years earlier, but, they couldn't say night together. They had to say spend time together, the Rolling Stones. And the Doors had to change their lyrics. It's like, they were very, very uptight in those days. But I thought the dress code was just kind of funny. Like, okay, he's putting on the collar. Steve Miller means a lot to me for many reasons. One is his songs are just iconic, and we used to play them all the time when I was a kid. And even though he wasn't, like the loudest, like Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, it just grooved. And it was just fun times. And it's just, the summer says Steve Miller. And 2 times I saw Steve Miller. Once was on the 4th of July, you don't get more America and apple pie than that, we had off the day at work, our bar, which I worked out in my late teens, early 20s. So we got everyone, the whole bar, we got like 30 tickets, all in like the 5th row. We're all going to go. Well, I came down with, I won't, it could have been an STD, may not have been. Sick as a dog. But I'm like, I'm going no matter what. I'm going to this show. We got 5th row seats. It's Steve Miller's my day off. So I went in early because I couldn't stay out in the parking lot and party anymore. I didn't feel well. So in the 5th row, I'm there, blazing sun, like 2 in the afternoon. There's like 3 opening bands. One of the opening bands was Lou Gramm from Just Quit Foreigner, so no one was there to see him. And I was the only person sitting down within the first 500 rows. So he goes, "Are you ready to rock, Pittsburgh?" He dressed up like a metal dude. And he looked at me because I was the only one sitting there, and I just laughed at him. It was funny. But a better Steve Miller story, maybe, one that really does include Steve, was I was driving. He was opening for the Grateful Dead at RFK in Washington, D.C. We left Pittsburgh. We got about 3 exits on the freeway, and I totaled my car.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but the good news is we just called the tow truck driver. He took it back to my buddy Rocky's garage. My other friend just drove, so we still made it to see Steve Miller in the Grateful Dead. And Steve Miller jammed the encore with the Dead, which was Casey Jones. driving that train high on cocaine.
Oh, yeah, you guys were taking the train after that car ride.
Yeah. They have a car for a while.
Well, let's get into some of these fan submissions. We have a lot of good ones. From Rob Matlock 7675, this looks like the lineup at Texas Jam or U.S. Festival or something they would hold at the Tulsa Motor Speedway. A solid lineup of rockers. Have your lighters ready to hold up and plenty of rolling papers. Steve Miller, Genesis, James Gang, and Brownsville Station all played the Tulsa Assembly Center in 1975 to 76 time frame. So this is not only a trip in the Wayback Machine for me, but also a trip to my favorite venue for rock and roll. James Cotton Band and Tim Buckley had the potential to be one of those groups whose songs were great but aren't played on the Oldies channel today. Maybe one of those lost memories I get to hear from time to time.
Yeah, James Cotton lived for a long time. I saw him play with the Grateful Dead a few times.
Yeah, seeing that duet, like I hadn't seen much of him. Like just like this guy said, this was someone who doesn't get radio play, who isn't seen as much. And so for someone like me, unless you are Steve Miller and some of these rock icons,
right,
a lot of the second, third acts down the list just never get remembered. So we're doing the Lord's work here, keeping everyone's memories of all these bands alive.
Yeah, I mean, is Buckley related to the other Buckleys? I don't know.
You're asking the wrong guy, but I'll tell you the knowledge in these comments on Fridays, the things that I learn, the things that people say in the chat, so much knowledge in there about music. It's amazing.
Someone's gonna let us know. Another. This is from Rebecca Wagner, 4167. Another timeless classic on the Midnight Special. This show was so freaking awesome. Thanks for keeping it clean, Becca. And amazing. The Steve Miller Band is spectacular. I just lived to watch this on the weekend. I couldn't wait to stay up and watch my favorite bands. Way to go, Rebecca.
Eric Little saw them at the New York State Fair in Syracuse for $2.99 in 77-78. Played for 2 hours straight. $5.99 for those without a wristband from the gate. That puts everything in a little time perspective.
$2.99. That's crazy. All right, we have a good one here from D. Wayne W. Lady KA 577. That's a long license plate. You're going to get pulled over with that license plate. I've been a fan of the Steve Miller Band for a long time. I remember their songs on the radio, and they were awesome. Fly Like an Eagle, Take the Money and Run, Yoo-hoo! Jetliner, Abracadabra. That was one from the 80s, Abracadabra, with a little funny video, and others. I did see the Steve Miller Band twice in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Cheers.
All right, David and Sorgi, 9301. Saw them at Summerfest in Milwaukee years ago, and they did Happy Birthday as one of their multiple encores. You know, I had to pull this comment because I've also been to Summerfest in Milwaukee. I obviously wasn't at this one, but I saw Tom Petty, and Pearl Jam opened for Tom Petty, and in their encore, they did American Girl together.
No way.
So that was one for the old memory bank that I'll have forever.
You know, I've been to Milwaukee a bunch of times. It's such a great, underrated city. And Summerfest, it's some of the best concerts you ever see on paper. And I've never been able to like a bit of one, but just look at that. Steve Miller, Pearl Jam.
And that time in the Midwest, like, the weather's just right. It's perfect for everyone. They've been put away all winter. They're getting it in. Like, it's a great place to be that time of year.
And you can also go genuflect in front of Fonzie's statue, which I do every time I go to Milwaukee. And if you're ever in Milwaukee and you like a steam like I do, go to the Pfister Hotel. Unfortunate name for a hotel, but a classy joint.
Nice.
Great steam room. All right, Tony _ I know that word, 1881 _ Y no T. Okay. I've seen SMB. That's pretty sweet. Steve Miller Band several times. Never disappoints. My memories of the Midnight Special was staying up late to watch them when I was a teenager in the mid to late 70s. I had a box cassette recorder that I would tape the music on some of my favorite bands at the time. Yeah, that's what we used to do. Hold the cassette right up to the TV. From the TV broadcast, I would play those until I could afford to buy the record. Eddie Money and Meatloaf were two that I remember. Good times. Yeah, Tony. Those are great times.
Frog Lobster. First time was Desert Park with 4 other bands. Steve was the only classic rock band. Sass Jordan was good. Extreme, a one-hit wonder. Grapes of Wrath, another hit wonder. And Bryan Adams was okay. Second time, Steve came with Frampton. Great double bill.
That is some sweet guitar right there. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. Double bill is right.
Nathan Williams, 3877. My first big concert was a Steve Miller Band when I was 12 or so. ZZ Top was supposed to play, but they canceled. And Steve Miller Band filled in. Steve chipping in there, filling in.
You know, here's one of the things I thought about when I read this. Was there was a time period where getting refunds and doing all of that, especially if they were cash or check purchases before like easy electronic stuff was happening, that doing refunds would be hell. So having a band fill in and having that option to keep those tickets going, like that was huge. And that probably happened a lot more back then, because I don't think I've ever heard of any headlining band in my era ever having to cancel a show and then suddenly just having a different band fill in and everyone being like, cool, this is great.
Well, I think it just happened. I think those things happen at festivals.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because if it's like, okay, you know, whatever, ZZ Top, you know, Billy Gibbons got sick, they're like, okay, well, they'll come back in 3 months. But I think it's a festival because just recently the Foo Fighters had to cancel, so they got Jack White.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got one more. Okay, Brian Jacobson, 5005. That was a nice, easy one. Thanks, Brian, for keeping it cool. Brian with a Y, too. So don't get confused, Brian with an I. It's not you. Saw them at the spectacular Gorge Amphitheater venue 8 times starting in the late 80s. Every show was a blast. The band was always sharp, and every time the crowd sang along in unison to every song. Yeah, that's the thing with these guys that come to town every summer. Everyone knows what they're getting, and it's still amazing every single time, and the bands just get tighter and tighter and tighter. The Gorge is one of the most amazing venues on earth.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've never been, but in Washington, these pictures, we'll have some up there for you. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, you can't beat the Gorge.
Ooh.
You can't beat Steve Miller in the sun. There's just some of these bands, like, that's why it's so great that Steve Miller is still playing. He played this summer, because once these bands go, that's it. And to me, Steve Miller's like the Dead and Tom Petty. There's bands that just deserve to be played outside.
I hope he comes to the Hollywood Bowl again soon. I love seeing stuff there. That's what I want.
Seeing stuff there is amazing. Parking there, not so much.
Yeah, that is true.
I prefer the Greek, but this is not the debate section of the show. We're wrapping this up right now, but I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I love doing this podcast. I love doing the show. I love the Midnight Special. I want to thank Bert Sugarman for everything he's given us. We all need to thank Bert. Look at all the entertainment we've had. Just hitting YouTube, Midnight Special, just tons and tons of great episodes. And look, go to the store. Look at that fine hat. We got hats, T-shirts, hoodies, the Midnight Special. So when you go see Steve Miller Band, it gets a little chilly at night for second set. You can wear your hoodie and say, hey! You can point to the people in their hats and their hoodies. So the merch store is great. You can become a YouTube member for $4.99, and you get an extra the Midnight Special episode every Monday morning. And you can join us in the live chat Friday nights. And I heard that's a great time.
I'll be there every Friday. You can talk to me. You can sneak in some requests about some of those member episodes. We can't always play everyone that gets requested. We're still dealing with trying to get some of the rights through YouTube and just all of the mess of getting different videos approved. But we try to pay attention to our members, and we try to get some of these ones that might not come up chronologically for the next few years out sooner that I know you guys are waiting for. So talk to us and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, you are literally like a radio DJ. You know, every song in the Electric Lunch you call in doesn't always get played.
Yeah, my facial hair and presence just isn't quite Wolfman Jack, but I mean, I'll try.
Jack. How great is Wolfman Jack on these episodes?
Oh, he's the best. I mean, I wish I could have half the performance that old Wolfman has, but legend.
Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in again, and we will be back next week with another great artist from the Midnight Special archives on YouTube. For the great Mike Now, I'm Joe Bartnick. Have a great week.
So let the